In this video, I want to start talking about something that I think gives students a lot of trouble, and I've just called this video Intimidation. Why did I call it that? Whether it's the new SAT, the ACT, subject tests, whatever it is, the general rule is this. The problems on that test, even if they're marked as hards, are generally speaking not as hard as you think they are. The College Board, ACT Incorporated, whoever's making the test, part of what they do is make a problem seem harder than it is. Even if it's a hard, even if it's a 5 out of 5, a hard ranked question. Sure, it's hard, but the only reason it's hard, we should note, the only reason questions are called hards is because a certain percentage of students got it right, and that percentage of students is relatively low. Right? There's nothing necessarily inherent to the problem itself that makes it hard. It's a statistical measure more than anything else. So what makes questions hard? Well, there's all different kinds of things that can make questions hard, but one of the things that makes questions hard is students thinking that the question is really hard. Intimidation. They will try to write questions to make them seem much more complicated and difficult than they really are. But as it turns out, if you know the most efficient approach, if you know the little factoid that can help, the question which may seem hard turns out to be really, really easy. And what I want to do is illustrate that with this question. Now, this question applies to the new SAT, applies to sort of the ACT, to the subject test, maybe to other tests you might be doing in math. So regardless of the test you're taking, go ahead and try this question. So this is a perfect example of intimidation in action. What is the remainder when that function is divided by x minus 1? So we have this x to the 5th function, this polynomial with the highest exponent being 5. Very rare that we would see that. And so we can't factor it. I mean, if you could factor x to the 5th, more power to you, but I think it's more or less impossible or more or less extremely difficult to do so by hand. So it looks really hard. It looks like, oh, I have to divide this. You could use long division or synthetic division, which honestly isn't that bad, but if you're not comfortable with long division or synthetic division, it just may take you a while. It's easy to make mistakes. The point is, this question has been written to hide the fact that actually it's a very simple idea, very simple concept is necessary to solve it. We don't need to do crazy pages of math to solve a question like this. And let me just show you what that is. So the thing to remember when you're dividing a polynomial by some binomial by some factor, if you think about that factor, that binomial, and you say, okay, if we set this equal to 0, this equation equal to 0, then this factor would make the polynomial equal to 0 when x equals 1. That's the solution, the root, right, of that polynomial. If x minus 1 divided into it, we should say. So if the solution of this is x equals 1, here's the trick. When you plug in that solution from that binomial into the function, whatever value you get out is your remainder. That's it. So literally all we have to do is plug 1 into this polynomial, and it makes things really straightforward. Because now we're going to get 1 minus 3 plus 3. This should be a plus. These cancel. So we get 1 minus 10 plus 12. So we get 3. So that's why we get choice D. So I'll be talking a lot more about this when it comes to reading, when it comes to ACT science, when it comes to grammar, writing, even the essays. Their goal is to make questions seem harder than they are. Because just think about it for a second. Let's say you have a question that is easy. Let's say you have a question that is hard. Can you make a hard question seem easy? You could, and that's part of what could make it hard, right? To make a question that's hard actually seem easy makes it harder because students will think too simply about it, think too quickly, fall into easy traps. So that's something they can do, and that's a whole different topic for a different day. Or they can take an easier question and make it seem harder by dressing it up with language, making it seem fancy, making it seem like you have to go down other paths that are really time-consuming, like in this case, long division or factoring or something. So the key is one of the tools in College Board, ACT Inc., whoever's toolbox, is to take an easy question and make it hard, and that's why it's a hard question. It's not because there's really anything hard about this math. This math is easy. You just got to know this little trick. And if you know the little trick, it's a quick question. So we'll talk a lot more about this in the context of other question types. But I just want you to keep this in mind in general. When you're practicing, when you're working through practice material, realize that the questions that you're doing, sure, there's some that are hard, can't deny it, but there are a lot of them that may be ranked as hard or may seem hard, but are actually quite simple. So don't be intimidated. Don't back down easily. Keep working at it, because you'll see a lot of these questions can be solved in much easier, much more quicker way than you might initially think. To learn more about Reason Prep's SAT, SAT subject test, and ACT video courses, go to reasonprep.com/enroll, and you can find the link in the description below the video.